Yomא Perek Beis Mishnah Gimel. Hapayas Hasheni, the second lot. We mentioned in the previous Mishnah there were 4 lots in total. So the second lot, Hapayas Hasheni, Mi Shoichet, Mi Zoyrek, etc. The Mishnah is now going to list the second lot, which determines who's going to be involved in this sort of section of the avodah. Now, every day a carbon was offered up in the Beis Hamikdash, a carbon tomid shel Shacharis and a carbon tomid shel Bein Habayim, and this second lot would determine who would be involved with the carbon tomid shel Shacharis. Mi Sheichet, who would shecht, he would be the winner. Mi Zerek, and the Kohen standing next to him, he would do the zrika. And then, so too, the other jobs listed in the Mishnah, they would do these. Now, in total, there are 13 Kohanim needed over here. So the way it works is that they all stand in a big circle, and as we explained in the first Mishnah, that they would put out a finger, and the Mamunah, the person, the administrator, the person in charge, would call out a large number, would randomly select one Kohen, and would start from there and go round until he would end up with the number he randomly chose, and whoever he stopped at, he would be the winner. And that person, according to the listing in the Mishnah, would do the shechita. But Bar Tanura actually switches it around and said that the person who wins actually does the zrika. The zrika is much more prestigious. For example, the shechita can be done by a non-Kohen. The zrika, however, has to be done by the Kohen. So therefore the zrika, the person who won did the zrika. The one next to him, he actually did the shechita. And then the third one, mi medashin ha-mizbech ha-panimi, that would be the next one, etc., etc. And they'd use the winner then 12 of the next Kohanim, a total of 13 Kohanim. So it says the Mishnah as follows. Hapayas Hasheni, the second lot, was to determine Mi Sheichet, who would do the Shechita, Mi Zoyrek, who would do the Zrika, as we explained, Mi Medashin Mizbeach HaPnimi, who would clear out the ashes from the Mizbeach HaPnimi. There were 2 Mizbechos in the Beis HaMikdash. Of course, the large Mizbeach was in the Azara. That's where they would bring all the karbonos and they would burn, etc. But the Mizbeach HaPnimi was the smaller altar inside the Kodesh. The Beis Hamikdash was split up into various parts. So you had the Azara, and then you have the Kodesh, also sometimes called the Heichal, and then the Kodesh Kedoshim, which contains, of course, the Aron. But in the Kodesh, you have the Menorah, the Shulchan, and you also have the Mizbeach HaPnimi. And they would bring Ketores, for example, onto that. So they would also throw certain bloods on it. So that was the third job of this pious. Fourthly, Mi Medashen es HaMenorah. Who would be Medashin, who would clear out the ashes of the menorah? We mentioned in the first parak is actually machlokus what exactly this mitzvah, this avoda involves. Some say, Rash I think learns that it involved clearing out the wicks and the ash from the menorah. Others say that it also included pouring in the oil and setting up the wicks, and I think there was an opinion which says it involves both of those. So the machlokus exactly what Medashin ha-menorah involved. That would be done by the 4th Kohen. Now, these 4 Kohanim would have these specific jobs, and then the next 9, their jobs would be to take certain body parts of the animal and place them at the foot of the kevesh, of the ramp going up to the Mizbeach. Each of the following 9 Kohanim would take a certain part of the animal and would place it there, and eventually it would be taken up and placed onto the Mizbeach, thrown onto the Mizbeach. So, Mi ma'ale evarim lakevesh, who would take the limbs of the daily carbon up onto the ramp of the Mizbeach? So then, harosh v'haregel. One Kohen would take the rosh, the head of the animal, v'haregel, this is actually the hind leg. Harosh v'haregel, the hind leg. The Tanna Kama, the Bar Tanura explains at the end, in his commentary, at the end of this Mishnah, explains that the Tanna Kama is of the opinion that the choicest part of the animal should go first, and then the more secondary part of the animal next. And therefore the rosh actually goes first because the Psukim mention the rosh first. And since there is very little meat on the head, you take the hind leg, which is has got the most meat and is the toiv hayofa, he calls it. So that would be done by the first of these 9 Kohanim. So in other words, by the 5th Kohen, he would take the rosh v'haregel. Then next is Shtei HaYodayim, the 2 forelegs. That they were brought by the 6th Kohen. Ha'ukatz v'haregel, the tail of the animal, v'haregel, and the other hind leg. that would be brought by the seventh kohen. Hechozeh, the chest of the animal, which is the chest, sort of the underside facing the ground, that would be brought with the geira, with the neck of the animal, by the eighth kohen. So therefore, Hachozeh and geira go together. The chest and the neck of the animal will be brought by the eighth kohen. Ushteha defonos, the two sides, that would include most of the rib cage. That would be brought by the ninth kohen. V'hakrovayim, the intestines were brought in; they were placed in a bowl, and that would be brought by the 10th kohen. V'hasoiles, and the fine flour, that would accompany that would be needed for the mincha, because the mincha, a flour offering, will be brought with the daily offering, and that would be brought separately by the 11th kohen. V'chavitin, the chavitin is the special carbon of the kohen gadol. He would bring a mincha, a meal offering, which would need an asiris ha'ephah, which is a tenth of an ephah, which is about 43 1/5 eggs, that volume of flour, and it was baked in a machavas, which is a shallow pan, and therefore, hence its name chavitin, the minchas chavitin, related to the word machavas, the shallow pan, and it would make 12 loaves of bread. And they would offer up 6 in the morning and 6 in the afternoon. And one kohen, the 12th kohen, would bring these loaves. V'hayayin, and the wine, because the wine was needed for the nesachim to accompany this mincha, the mincha of the daily carbon. And that was poured onto the mizbeach. So in total we have 13 jobs, and that was what the second lot would actually determine. Continues the Mishnah. So 13 kohanim won this lottery, if you like. Omer ben Azai, lifnei Rabbi Akiva, mishum Rabbi Yeshua. Ben Azai said in the presence of Rabbi Akiva, quoting Rabbi Yeshua, Derech hilucha hayakarev. He takes issue with the Tanakama and takes issue with the parts, the order in which the parts were brought. Ben Azai says in the name of Rabbi Yeshua that the parts were offered up in the same way as the animal walks. So, for example, if you take a look at the end of the Bar Tanura's commentary of our Mishnah, B'derech chiluchai b'chayav, just like an animal walks, its head first, and then the reish and the regel and the chazeh, first the head, and then the front legs, and then the chest and the neck, etc., etc. Then eventually the tail. Then that would be the order in which it would be brought. However, the Tanakama argues with that, and the Tanakama says the most choicest parts of the animal would be offered first. So the reish, because the pasuk mentions it first, and then the choicest parts as listed previously in the Mishnah. And the Bar Tanura concludes, Ein halachik ben Azai. The halach is not like Ben Azai, who says derech hiluchai, but rather that the parts of the animal would be offered up as listed in our. We mentioned previously that there's a machlokus between the Bal HaMa'or and the Ramban, whether these lotteries took place on Yom Kippur. The Bal HaMa'or is of the opinion that these piyosos, these lots, did not take place on Yom Kippur, and the Ramban, as we mentioned, takes issue with that. So he explains that they did take place on Yom Kippur. The question, of course, is that this pious sheni, which we just mentioned, how can that take place on Yom Kippur? Surely this is the job of the Kohen Gadol. Why is it necessary to have a lottery to determine all of these jobs when they're going to be done by the Kohen Gadol? He has got to shecht and to do the zrika and to do all the bringing of the animal parts to the kevesh, to the ram, on Yom Kippur. So the Ramban explains that the lottery was needed for some of the jobs mentioned in this Mishnah, i.e. the medashenes ha-mizbech ha-pnimi and medashenes ha-menorah. The Ramban says that these are machshirei avodah, these are sort of preparation for the main avodah, and therefore they did not need to be done by the Kohen Gadol. And in order to determine who would do this on Yom HaKippurim, they would need a pious for that. That's how the Ramban explains pious sheni, how it was done on Yom Kippur. That is the end of Mishnah Gimel.